Alright guys, welcome back to Underground Science, and in this video, we'll be looking at the overview of the lymphatic system. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started and just quickly get familiar with our lymphatic system in our body, alright? So our lymphatic system, let's go and write this down. Our lymphatic system is actually really important in making sure that we don't lose too much blood volume. Alright, so our lymphatic system is really important. So we're going to say one good and important job of the lymphatic system is that to make sure that we don't lose major blood volume. All right, so that's one important job of the lymphatic system. And another important function of the lymphatic system is to actually plays a role in immunity. All right, so it's not only good in reabsorbing fluids back into the blood and also putting it back into circulation, it's also good in immunity. And one reason it's good for immunity is because we have lymph nodes also all over our body that's part of our lymphatic system. And this is where our most of our cell-mediated and humoral response occurs, which we'll talk about more in the immune system videos. All right, but here we can just say we have a lot of immune system activities, like our B cell activities, our B lymphocytes, and our T lymphocyte activities. All right. So those are the two major functions in the lymphatic system. And if we go over a quick overview, right? So let me go ahead and pull up a quick picture of the heart. All right, there you go. So pretty much when our heart pumps, right, especially when our left ventricle, so remember our left ventricle is this chamber right here, when it pumps, it actually goes up to about 120 millimeters of mercury of pressure, which is a lot of pressure because it actually has to pump the oxygenated blood here through the aortic valve, through the aorta, right, and throughout this brachiocephalic trunk, the left common carotid, and the left subclavian, and out to the rest of the body. All right, so it has to pump it all out to the rest of the body so that the whole body can get nutrients, and also obviously to the brain also. All right, so when it has to do that, pumps at high pressures, and because of that high pressure pumping, so actually, first what we should say is that we actually have, let me go and actually mention this in red, maybe starting right here, is that we have, so from our arteries, right, we continue down in our arteries, which are big, hefty blood vessels, right, and then we branch down into smaller blood vessels called arterioles, and then what happens is, like, when we get really close, right, to our, especially, it's important for diffusion and transfer of nutrients to our cells, we start branching into smaller blood vessels than arterioles called capillaries. All right, so we start to branch into capillaries after arterioles. And once we get to the capillaries, right, we have our venules afterwards. So we have like a sort of like a capillary bed. We have many capillary beds spread out through our body, right? So we can transfer nutrients easily. And then we have venules here, and then soon we branch to veins, right? So then we branch into bigger blood vessels called veins. But the main part we have to focus on is the capillaries and the venules. All right, so that's the main part of the capillary bed, is that we have to focus on the capillaries and the venules. All right, so the capillaries and the venules of our capillary bed. And a little bit too from our, or we have to also focus a little bit on our arterioles also. All right, so what happens is that we have a lot of cells nearby, right? Like our tissue cells, right? So we're going to have a bunch of cells nearby, let's say right here, right? So we have a bunch of cells, a lot of cells that are sitting there performing cellular respiration, right? And they need oxygen and nutrients. So what's going to happen is that because the heart pumps at such high pressures, the fluid that comes through the arterioles and down to the capillaries has high pressures, and what happens is that some fluid actually leaks out of these capillaries and goes into the tissues. So instead of just the tissues being alone right here, we get some fluid going, right? So we get some fluid leakage. So I'll represent this by fluid with the gray. All right, so we get some fluid leakage through the capillaries due to the high pressures of the heart. All right, when the heart pumps. So we have extra fluid that leaks out. And remember that we have around 5 liters of blood in our body, right? Around 5 liters. And so what happens is that if we keep on leaking fluids out throughout the day, our blood volume will decrease and decrease. And obviously that's going to lead to a very bad state, right? But luckily we have our lymphatic system that helps us get all these fluids that just leaked out back into circulation, all right, constantly. So we have lymphatic vessels here throughout our tissues, right? So we have lymphatic vessels here throughout our tissues that actually, right, so let me go and draw it differently, that actually help us get those fluid or get the fluid that leaked out into our lymphatic vessels, becoming lymph, right? So our fluid kind of enters our lymphatic vessels, and then our lymphatic vessels then can close up, so it prevents fluid from leaking back out from the lymphatic vessels, and then the lymphatic vessels can then go maybe to a lymph node, right? And then after a lymph node, you can then probably just go to the heart, right? So it can get pumped either to the heart. So it actually usually what happens is that most of the time, the lymph dumps into main ducts of the body. So we'll discuss that later, but just know that ultimately what happens is that the lymph actually goes back and gets dumped into circulation via our heart, eventually through our subclavian veins and into our superior vena cava of the heart, right? And then we get that fluid back into our heart, and then eventually, as we know through our heart playlist and cardiovascular playlist, is that fluid, along with the other formed elements of the blood, right, get pumped out of the heart into the body constantly. So we have a system here, a very cool system that prevents major blood volume loss and actually takes care of our extra fluid leakage from our capillaries and brings it back to circulation constantly throughout the day. And it turns out that throughout the day, around 20 liters of fluid from our blood actually get leaked out into our tissue space, into our interstitial space between our tissue cells. So let's write that down because that's actually pretty cool, right? So about in a day, right, 20 liters of fluid from the blood leaks out, all right? As you know, every time the heart pumps, a little leaks out, and by the end of the day, about 20 liters of fluid has leaked out of the blood capillaries, right? However, thanks to our lymphatic system, 17 of those 20 liters actually enters back into circulation right here, right near our venules, and then it goes back into our blood that way, but 3 of those liters becomes lymph. Now, 3 liters is a lot because remember, we have 5 liters of blood volume in our body. So 3 liters out of the blood is very dangerous if there's nothing there to pick it back up and put into circulation. So you know what, let's just go and write that down first. So 20 liters, right? So 20 liters gets leaked out, 20 liters of fluid, right? Of fluid gets leaked out of our blood capillaries. So from here it gets leaked out all this gray fluid that I represent with gray. Okay, and then 17 of those 20 liters, actually, we'll see why later on in another video. So 17 of those 20 liters actually gets put back into circulation through osmotic diffusion, right? Due to proteins that are higher concentration of large proteins that are flowing near our venules. So then they act like solutes and actually drive the fluid back in. But what about those 3 liters left, right? So this equates to 3 net liters of fluid still in our interstitial space. Remember that we only have 5 liters of blood volume, right, in our body. And if 3 of those 5 liters of blood volume is out of our blood vessels, that's super dangerous, right? That can lead to many fatal things. However, we have our lymphatic system that takes those 3 liters and into its lymphatic vessels as lymph, right? So once this fluid enters the lymphatic vessels, right? Or I should actually write this. Once it enters the lymphatic vessels, it's called lymph. All right, so it's called lymph fluid after that. It takes this lymph fluid and brings it back into circulation via the heart. All right, so sorry about that. Via the heart, right here, right? Eventually into the vena cava of the heart, or the superior vena cava of the heart, and then we pump it back into circulation into our blood. Right, so that's the basic idea of the lymphatic system. It takes the pumped out fluid due to the high pressures of the heart, takes the fluid and actually restores our blood volume through its system of lymphatic vessels by putting that extra fluid that was pumped out into the heart so it can be pumped back into circulation. And this cycle happens over and over, right, throughout the day. Like we said, throughout the day, 20 liters of fluid is actually pumped out, but 17 liters is put back in through osmotic diffusion, and 3 of those liters stay outside. However, those 3 liters are actually put back into the lymph and brought back to the heart. All right. And so that's pretty much it. That's all I wanted to get through in this video, just the basic idea of the lymphatic system, and we'll talk more about the lymphatic system in our future videos. So I hope this video made sense to you guys. I hope to see you guys in my future videos where I'll talk about more cool topics about biochem, physics, and chem. See you guys later, and don't forget to hit that notification bell, like and subscribe, and stay safe.